Yes, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to another episode of the F1 News Daily Show with your host, Peter. Peter on pole right here, right now. Early morning settings, as you can see. Good afternoon, wherever it is you may be watching. Good evening, it might be your lunch break. It could be your day off work. Well, thank you for joining me nonetheless. Do smash the like button and the subscribe button. If you like Formula One content, Formula One news, if you like all of that above, then please do subscribe to the channel. Today, Carlos Sainz. We're finally going to talk about it. He's signed a new contract with Ferrari that takes him to 2024. And we need to talk about what does that mean for Ferrari? What does that mean for Carlos Sainz? What does that mean for Mick Schumacher? What does it mean for the rest of the grid in terms of the merry-go-round that is transfer news, that is, driver lineups in the coming weeks? But yes, I think, it's a couple of things to kick things off with. Carlos Sainz, or Ferrari rather, announcing it, was it the Friday of Imola or the Thursday, where they announced that he had his new contract just ahead of, practice one, the sprint race, I thought was absolutely crazy. Why would they do that? And I say that because, it could affect the driver. It can affect what's going on. Formula One teams are world-class teams, right? They are world-class at what they do. And I don't know, I have a feeling just the last thing you need is a bit of distraction, right? Surely what you need is full-on concentration. The weekend ahead, there's a race at Imola. Ferrari's home. You got practice, you got quali. You only got one practice session before quali. Then you have one practice session before the sprint race. And then the race itself. And, Ferrari as a whole, they had a bit of a disaster weekend. Including Carlos Sainz, through no fault of his own, really, although not getting into Q3 for Carlos, or let me say he got into Q3, but in 10th place, he couldn't do a run because of what happened to him in Q2. Was there some distraction? Was there something that kind of was playing on his mind? The rumors were kind of circulating that Carlos Sainz wasn't going to get a new deal, which was interesting if that was going to be the case. If Carlos Sainz ain't getting a new deal, then we need to have a discussion. Of course he should be having a new deal. With the Scuderia Ferrari. So let's talk about it. Carlos Sainz, new deal. And of course, this puts him as well in the top 10 highest paid drivers in Formula One. His salary is estimated to be around $10 million a year. So that's for next season as well as the season after. It's a contract extension. I don't know if it kicks in now or if it kicks in at the end of the season. Comments down below if you know which way it's going. But nonetheless, though, people, you've really got to ask yourself some serious questions now, because what does this mean for Ferrari? Why would Ferrari renew a contract for Carlos Sainz? Now, before everybody gets all a bit crazy, remember he finished ahead of Charles Leclerc last season in the 2021 Formula One season. It's easy to forget that because Charles Leclerc now is doing his thing. He's looking dominant. He's looking pretty good, isn't he? And you could probably argue that, if Charles Leclerc is going to get a new contract, then sure as hell, Carlos Sainz deserves to get a new deal as well. So, with that in mind, how do we feel? How do we feel about this new contract of Carlos Sainz? How do we feel about him getting a new contract? Will he be winning races in 2022? Will he be winning races for the Scuderia Ferrari in 2022? Any Ferrari fans in the building? Do smash a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are about this new signing. It seems en masse that this has been, sort of a positive look. People seem to have agreed with it. People seem to like that Carlos Sainz has a new deal. And till 2024, 2-year extension. No biggie really, is there? Mattia Binotto said that they got the best driver pairing in Formula One. I beg to differ, Mr. Mattia. I beg to differ. I don't think you got the best driver pairing in Formula One. It's good. It's nothing to snigger at. It's nothing to turn your nose up at. Of course, there could be there. But Carlos Sainz is more Mr. Consistency in terms of I finish races. I can finish in the top 6 every race. And, some cases that might be 3rd place, 2nd place, or sometimes it might be 5th place, 6th place. Will he actually get a win over the line? Now, you have to think he has to get a win over the line. He has to at this stage, right? He has to get a win over the line because why would Ferrari sign him? And also, the Ferrari car finally looks good. And one could argue patience is finally paying off. if you're a Ferrari fan. You know, if you're a Ferrari fan, you could probably think, oh, it's about time we got our car in the front part of the grid. Charles Leclerc's been there long enough to know so. And remember, Carlos Sainz left McLaren last year, or the beginning of last year, whereby McLaren had a good project going. They were looking strong in the constructors. They were looking like the front car in the midfield pack, to the point where they could be challenging Mercedes, Red Bull. That's when Carlos left. And because of how Carlos performed last season, in terms of consistency, in terms of how good he did, Ferrari picked McLaren to the third in the constructors last year. So it kind of brings it full circle now. We've got our project. Carlos Sainz kind of left one project that looked very promising to join another, which he said, look, it's my dream to drive for Ferrari. It was always my dream. If Ferrari come knocking on the door, I'm so sorry, guys. That's basically what he was saying. I loved being at McLaren. There was something to go on there. There was a project going on. However, when Ferrari come knocking, it's almost impossible to ignore. So you can understand it. You can understand why he didn't stay with Ferrari. Stay with McLaren and move to Ferrari. As a McLaren fan, I was gutted. But we gained Danny Ricciardo. So, cool. And both are good drivers. Both are driving for good teams. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens when we get to the head-to-head towards the end of the season. You would like to think Ferrari are going to say something in this title race, both in the Constructors and in the Drivers' Championship. But already, now we've gone 4 races in, and Carlos has had a mixed bag. He's had a mixed bag of 2 good races and 2 bad ones. And that is kind of what I expect to see a bit more. I don't see him finishing ahead of Charles in the Drivers' Championship. And if he does, it could well be that he could be world champion. It could well be that, right? So we have to wait and see. Will he challenge Max Verstappen better than Charles will? Or will it be a fight between Charles and Carlos Sainz? Maybe Max Verstappen doesn't even get in this conversation, 10 races down the line, right? So a lot to think about. But of course, it got me thinking as well about Mick Schumacher. Because of course, the fairy tale story is like father, like son. Mick Schumacher is going to jump into the Ferrari like his dad did, right? But does this 2-year extension for Carlos Sainz pump the brakes on the Schumacher revolution, on the Schumacher legacy, on the Schumacher? It's not the trilogy yet, is it? It's the what's the second thing? Sequel. Let's just call it that, right? It clearly is going to put brakes on it. It clearly is going to put brakes on that. So, what do we think? What do we think in the end? Do we think that Mick Schumacher needs this time? In fact, does this work out better for Mick Schumacher? Because of the fact that Carlos has got 2 years, it gives Mick Schumacher 2 more years to really get that, get Formula One under his grasp. Because let's be serious, right? 4 races in, he has no points in a Haas that looks really good. Really, really good. Ask Kevin Magnussen. He's doing bloody good in that Haas, right? Points. Top 4 qualies. Top 10 finishes. Magnussen's doing a blinding job at Haas. And Mick Schumacher's got a year under his belt. And K-Mag has been out for a year. So, shout out to Mahad from the Pit Stop Fracker. We were talking about this on the McLaren Fan TV show. Mick Schumacher sort of came up, and it was a case of, when do we start to have a conversation about Mick? Mick is kind of like, you can't really talk about them. It's like talking about the Queen, or you can't say anything bad about them. Not now anyway. And I don't know. It looks like we're going to have a conversation and talk about, where does Mick stand in Formula One? Will the Ferrari dream ever happen? Because let's paint this picture, right? Charles looks like the golden child at Ferrari at this moment in time. He looks like the Ferrari man. If you thought he was Italian, you wouldn't have been, nobody would have even, had a problem with you thinking that, right? Because he's so Ferrari, it fits like a glove. Then you got Carlos Sainz, who could improve and could be getting better and better and better as time goes on. Let's say Carlos Sainz has a good day, has a good season, has a good year. and the contract's up again. We fast forward to 2024. What do we do now? What do we do then? Do we say, no, it's time to drop Charles, or it's time to drop Carlos to bring in Schumacher? If Schumacher is kind of at the level where he's at now, let's say he gets a couple of points here and there, right? Let's not act like he's not going to get a point, because I think he has to at this year. This year, he has to get a point. You know, if he doesn't get points this year, oh my goodness, next year will be, the pressure's on. The pressure's so on. So the question then becomes, say that all happens, does Mick Schumacher not make it to Ferrari anymore? If you're Ferrari, do you drop him? Do you dare drop him? Questions have to be asked, definitely. But on the face of everything, the Carlos Sainz Ferrari extension deal looks like it's normal, looks like it's fine, no issues there. But when you start to sort of break it down, we're talking about a driver who hasn't won a race in Formula One. And I'm not trying to beat him. Believe me, I'm not. I do like Carlos Sainz. I'm a big fan of Carlos Sainz. But when we're talking about Ferrari, we're talking about the big leagues, the big dogs in Formula One, right? Why does Carlos Sainz have a say in this? Why should he be in this mix? Just a question. Why should he be here? Comment down below. What do you think? And in terms of top 10 highest paid drivers in Formula One, now, caveat, right? The top two are like, you know, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton. They're like on $40 million a year. And Fernando Alonso, I think, is in third place, $20 million a year, right? Your Vettels and so on. Norris is up there as well. Danny Ricciardo's up there as well. So for somebody who hasn't won a race and is on a contract like this, interesting. When I look at the grid now, you know, of course, Max Verstappen has won a race. Hamilton's won a race. Bottas has won races. Leclerc, Danny Ricciardo, Sebastian Vettel. There's quite a few of them. Esteban Ocon, who've won races, right? You can name about 7 off the grid right there and then. So you do wonder to yourself, does Carlos Sainz even deserve to be here? Like, let's take away the fact he drives for Ferrari, yeah? Because I guess Ferrari will always have a top 10 paid driver, right? Fair enough. And it seems to have only sparked news that he's in the top 10 now, which got me thinking, like, surely he was in the top 10 before, right? Comment below if you know if he was a top 10 paid driver. I mean, bear in mind, we did have the likes of Kimi Räikkönen in Formula One last year, so maybe there's something to be said there. Maybe he bumped somebody out. But yes, Pierre Gasly's won a race, right? So I do wonder, it kind of, just in my opinion, it doesn't seem to match up or make sense to me. Why Carlos Sainz is top 10. I think he's top 8, in fact. Highest paid driver in Formula One. Without a race win, yes, he's got podiums. And yes, he's helped his team finish 3rd in the constructors, right? He's not a bad driver. He's no slouch, right? But I am asking questions. And if the top earner is 40 million and say the top 8 person is like 10 million, the gaps are serious, aren't they? They're very, very serious. I mean, Max being on the same money as Lewis is hilarious to me. Hilarious to me. And I got all the time in the world for Max. And I got all the time in the world for Lewis. Lewis is a 7-time Formula One world champion. He's been in Formula One since 2007. These are not, you can't just buy that. You know what I'm saying? He is the real deal. And has been showing it for the last decade or so. But yeah, Carlos Sainz new deal, interesting is what I will say. Interesting to say the least. Comment your thoughts below. Let me know what you guys are thinking on this. Because I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. He's top 10 highest paid driver, top 8, I think, in some articles have mentioned. Top 8 highest paid driver in Formula One. No race wins. Drives for Ferrari. He's got an extension. And this puts back Schumacher rejoining Ferrari. What I mean by that is, of course, like father, like son. Michael Schumacher passing that reign on to Mick Schumacher. And we still are going to have to wait a little bit longer for that Schumacher-Ferrari combination. But yeah, interesting. You know, the pressure's on now for Carlos as well, by the way. Let's not take away anything from Carlos. He now has to deliver Ferrari. He has to deliver for them. If they felt like they're going to give him a new deal, he now has to deliver. In the same way that Charles Leclerc has delivered in cases. You know, Charles got 4 race wins under his belt now. So let's see what Carlos can do. Let me know in the comment section below. If you like Formula 1 content like this, people, hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll be back again sooner than you know it. Thank you for joining me on the F1 News Daily Show. Big up your chest each and every single time. I'll see you guys in the next one. With that said, people, lights out.